One of the things that autistic people have to deal with is autism stereotypes. We hear, "You don't look autistic," or "You must have very mild autism," or people expect us to really love trains or maths. These misconceptions are based on stereotypes. What does looking autistic mean to the general public? They obviously have an idea of what autism is and what it might look like, and we don't fit it. It can lead to us feeling like our identities as autistic people are not valid, and it can lead to other people feeling that our autism diagnoses are not valid. But autistic people are humans, and humans are all different from each other. So let's chuck these stereotypes out of the window and encourage people to learn about autistic people as individual people with individual presentations of autism. I'm going to look at 5 of the common autism stereotypes and why many autistic people might not fit them. Let's start with trains. A very, very common autism stereotype is the autistic train spotter. And yes, many autistic people do love trains, and many non-autistic people love trains. Loving trains is a human thing, not an autism thing. And yes, it brings me so much joy to watch Francis on TikTok enjoy trains and to see how much passion and enjoyment his special interest brings to him. But again, there are as many special interests as there are autistic people. And while some autistic people love trains, that doesn't make loving trains an autistic behaviour. Equally, loving Pokemon, chess, computers or comic books are not requirements for being autistic. The intensity of the interest is autistic behaviour. The choice of interest is human behaviour. I've met some people with some really unusual special interests. Like one lady I met a few years ago who really loves church tiles, you know, the tiles they have on the floors in churches? Yeah, she loves those, which is really cool. And equally, I've met autistic people with some really mainstream special interests like fashion and popular music and horse riding. Again, the intensity of the interest is autistic, not the interest itself. So no, you don't have to get on a Thomas the Tank Engine t-shirt for people to believe that you are autistic. Stereotype number 2, the autistic maths genius. I don't fit this stereotype because I am dreadful at maths. In fact, I even failed my maths GCSE. Shh, don't tell my old boss at the call centre this, because on my application I may have fudged that fact. Oh look, there's a bonus autism stereotype dispelled. Autistic people can in fact lie, especially if they have rent to pay and they're really struggling to get a job. Thanks in part to Simon Baron-Cohen and in part to Rain Man, a film about an autistic savant who was really, really good at maths, there's a common misconception that alongside your autism diagnosis, you will also get the bonus gift of genius maths ability. Yeah! Unfortunately for my secondary school maths teacher, this simply is not true. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, I really didn't mean to make you suffer. Anyway, there's actually been plenty of research attempting to prove that autistic people are especially good at maths. This was based on the premise that, broadly speaking, human brains tend to prefer one of 2 approaches to problem solving. Either we identify a relationship between categories and predict an outcome, so a systematic approach, or we use social function to come to our conclusion, so an empathy-based approach. Usually people are using a combination of those 2, but generally people will have a preference between a systematic approach and an empathetic approach. And maths needs a systematic approach, and in this research the assumption was made that autistic people would prefer a systematic approach and would therefore be more likely to be good at maths. And don't forget, the theory is that autistic people tend to use systematic approaches because we don't have good empathy. But wait! In 2 separate studies, one with adults and one with children, the research just simply did not support this premise. No evidence of superiority at maths was shown amongst the autistic participants. Perhaps, and this is pure speculation, the assumptions about empathetic approach versus systematic approach did not take into account the double empathy problem. This is Dr. Damien Milton's theory that autistic people have no difficulty feeling and expressing empathy towards other autistic people, and likewise, neurotypical or non-autistic people have no difficulty demonstrating empathy with other neurotypical people, and that the problems occur when an autistic person and a neurotypical person try to demonstrate empathy and feel empathy towards each other, because we're doing it differently. And my own experience with my autistic friends would demonstrate that this seems to hold true. So could it be that the entire assumption about autistic people being good at maths was based on bad science to begin with? Whatever the truth of the matter, the facts remain that some autistic people are really good at maths, some autistic people are average at maths, and some, like me, really, really suck at it. And that does not make me less autistic. Oh, and by the way, I also dispelled another bonus autism myth in there, the one about autistic people lacking empathy, so that's 3 plus 2 bonuses. Go me. Right, while we're chucking all autistic people are good at maths out the window, can we also chuck out all autistic people have a special gift? I think this one comes from a very small section of the autism population, autistic savants. Side note, you can have savant syndrome without being autistic, and you can be autistic without having savant syndrome. In fact, autistic savants are incredibly rare. Autistic savants, alongside their autism and generally a learning disability, demonstrate an extraordinary ability. Like Kim Peek, who can name the day of the week when he's given a date, even if it's decades in the future. Or Stephen Wiltshire, who can draw incredibly detailed landscapes when he's only seen them once. Like, wow. And yeah, it's really cool and interesting, but this is particular to savant syndrome and not to autism. Many autistic people, like myself, demonstrate no superpowers whatsoever, which is a shame because I think I'd look really good in a cape. Let's move on to our final stereotype, number 5. Autistic people do not have emotions. I'm currently reading The Bride Test by author Helen Hoang. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's the second of a series of 3 books by Helen about autistic people and relationships. They're kind of romantic novels for autistic people, which is really cool. Anyway, in The Bride Test, the central autistic character says that he cannot love. He is incapable of loving someone. He says this because he knows that he's never felt the emotion. Obviously, this isn't true, and without giving the central plot away, it turns out that it's not so much that he hasn't experienced the emotion, but that he's had difficulty identifying and processing the emotion, which is, I think, where this stereotype originates. I definitely have emotions, big emotions, but my experience of them is very different to neurotypical people. I have a hard time identifying and processing them. I tend to have a delayed reaction with my emotions, so when someone's expecting the emotional reaction in the moment, I might have it several hours or even several days later. So several hours or several days later, I'll then, in the middle of whatever I'm doing, experience that emotion and have to process and understand why I'm experiencing it. Honestly, it's a lot. And it leads to misunderstandings, like I don't get emotional when someone that I love dies immediately, which might lead to people believing that I'm not feeling anything or that I'm cold. Or I might not react appropriately when someone gives me a gift, leading people to think that I wasn't pleased or I wasn't grateful. So I learned to mask appropriate emotional responses to make the people around me feel more comfortable. But to be honest, I really wouldn't recommend this because years later I'm having to unpick that and figure out what is real and deal with the overload, and again, it's a lot. And I've been left with significant mental health issues and exhaustion and a sense of just not really knowing who I am, which is going to take me some time to unpick and recover from. So it would really be most ideal if people could understand this about autistic people and not necessarily expect the emotional responses in that immediate moment, leaving us to be free to be who we are and react how we naturally react without having to deal with all of the aforementioned head chaos of having to fake it. I hope that you enjoyed this video today. If you did, please click the like button. I make content like this every single week, so it would be also great if you would consider subscribing to my channel. And if you'd like to support me further, you can click the join button at the top of my channel for more information about becoming a member of my YouTube club. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.